Right. Yeah, because you've got to look at it this way, right? So what are the major issues? The union.
Particularly now, Sturgeon School.
Union. You've got cost of living, Ukraine, and then the fact that as a culture we're just like absolutely tearing up chunks out of each other on every issue. Like no issue can be like, oh, you hold that view and I hold this view, great, let's go and get a drink together. It's you hold that view, therefore you hate the country, or you hold that view, therefore you hate the country. It's like there's nothing to deal with that madness, essentially.
I think what made me laugh a lot, I saw this video, it was like early on in the leadership stuff, where Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries stood behind Liz Truss, and they said, you know, she's a bigger Brexiteer than all of us. You know, she's the biggest Brexiteer in the leadership race. Yes. She campaigned for Remain.
No, but she campaigned for Remain, and she was also at the herald of one of the Remain's worst, like, campaigns ever, Project Fear. Like, if you think the narrative in the Brexit years were what? Project Fear was wrong. And it was. Liz Truss herself admits it. So, but Project Fear was wrong. On every measure, none of the predictions they made happened. They lied pretty much all the time, bigger lies than the 350 million on the bus. But that by the by, my problem is, the reason I lied, right, here's why, if I was a Tory party member, guess what I'm looking at? You're looking at, do I vote for the man who is the architect, in many ways, of the cost of living crisis? Or do I vote for someone that has political seasons of change? And what I mean by that is she was a Lib Dem until 97, an anti-monarchist, now she's claiming to be a monarchist. She was a Remainer, now she's claiming to be a Brexiteer. See, you're left with two dreadful choices. Like, I don't like Penny Mordaunt myself, but at least you could say Penny Mordaunt had principles, and the same with Kevin Badenoch. You can say those two had principles. But
I don't really have any roles to play in this race at all. I'm not a Tory party member.
No, neither was a Tory party member, so we're talking about this like without a chance of being able to vote.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Tory party member. I don't really like any of the candidates, to be honest. But if I'm from sort of someone who's looking to the future, to the next election, I'm thinking I want the Lib Dems to be picking up, 20 seats, adding 20 seats, so we're getting into the 30s, and I want Labour to be winning some seats back in the north. Who scares me the most out of that original lineup? It was Penny Mordaunt.
Yeah, so my view is there were only two candidates in that election. My view is 2023 Labour win. Not enough to get seats. I think the Tories are out in 2023. I want to be wrong, not because I want the Tories in power, but because I actually think I'd rather destroy the country at 5 miles per hour rather than 5,000 miles per hour. So Labour and Lib Dems will get in 2024.
Woo!
Or 2023, whenever we have this election.
Yeah.
Which I know you're over the moon about.
Yeah.
But what I say is the two candidates that probably would have stopped that would have been Ken Badenoch or Penny Mordaunt. Ken Badenoch, because none of the... Keir Starmer would not have been able to do most of the attacks on the cultural issues that he does. Because imagine a white middle-class guy standing up at the Starbucks against a woman of colour. The greatest... Look, what was Cameron's finishing line? Pretty much it would be 2-0. I am convinced that the first ethnic prime minister this country will have will be a Tory, but that's just how things go in our country, because the anti-progressive party seems to tick the boxes of diversity.
It's just really simple, isn't it? It's like, well, Labour in the post-war period has really hardly had stable power. They don't win elections that often.
No,
so
and it...
if you think about it, I mean, since 12 years of my life have been under Conservative rule. 8 of those were Labour rule. My mum didn't see...
Sorry, say that again. 12 years of my life? Do you mean...
Of my life. Since
and then you went 8 years of... Oh, together. Sorry, it sounded like you were saying that you, lived 2 lives.
No. So, 12 years out of the 20 have been Conservative rule. And in that time, we've seen a female Prime Minister. My mum, in her, 50-odd years, she's had, 12 years of wow, plus, maybe 2 or 3 in the 70s. But, not even 20 out of her 30, out of her 50 years have been Labour. They just don't win elections. So I think when people say, well, why, the irony of Labour being the progressive party, not ever having, a female leader and all this kind of stuff, well, it's just logical when you think about it. It's like, well, they don't win elections, so they're not going to have ethnic minority prime ministers. They're not going to have female prime ministers because they don't have prime ministers at all.
Yeah, no, this is the other thing.
Very often.
I think what's fascinating is the 2 times Labour have genuinely won outright majorities have never been from... have been from some very bizarre places. Radical protectionistic instincts in Clement Attlee and radical kind of institutional change with Blair. So it's been that sense of which no other Labour lead, when Labour offers that, they transform. This is why generally I don't think Keir Starmer has the ability, because he's not in a way a return to Blair, but he's a return to techno management. So he's returned to government by just overseers, essentially of middlemen and busybodies, essentially. Which, and think of it, the problem is you've got 3 parties who are not actually offering any programme. 2019, okay, you had the Brexit, let's use this as a programme, not just a which wins. But in 2024, look, you cannot approach an election as a Tory in 2024 and go, don't vote for Labour because they'll bankrupt the economy. Because the greatest comeback to that is, okay, let's have a look at 2020, 2021, 2022. Oh yeah, what do we have? An unnecessary economic restrictions, a cost of living crisis, energy prices going up. So it's just if you had to vote, who are you going for?
In the leadership election?
Yeah.
Purely for selfish reasons. Well, the thing is, it's difficult, right? Because theoretically, this person could be Prime Minister for a couple of years before they see an election.
And you can change things around in 2 years.
But when I think about it, it's well, there's two opinions, isn't there? I mean, from a Liz Truss, right? If Liz Truss becomes Prime Minister, it's both good and bad from a Lib Dem Labour perspective. Because on the one hand, she will not win the Tories the next election. She's shown complete and utter disdain for the union. She's shown, her solution to the cost of living crisis is to cut taxes, which may seem popular as a campaigning slogan. Realises that she can't do that. There's going to be some problems. But also, the other side of that is, well, how much damage from a Labour Lib Dem perspective to the country can she do in 2 years? Probably quite a lot, considering that she's got a 60-seat majority now. Rishi Sunak probably isn't going to deviate that far from what Boris has done, because Rishi Sunak was the finances for 2 years after Boris Johnson. We know what Rishi Sunak's platform is because he's shown us in his time as Chancellor. He was never really quiet about it. Boris was very influenced by Rishi Sunak. And I still don't think that he can win the next election. I don't see it. He's everything that I think the North dislikes about the Conservative Party, the traditional working class voter dislikes about the Conservative Party, which is about well-educated former bankers, who's a JP Morgan banker, coming in, telling you how you can live your life. Because that's exactly what he is. He's just a banker who got into politics, tried to charm everyone, but he showed his true colours time and time again. It's pretty obvious that he leaked the initial Partygate photos because they were taken from his office into the Downing Street garden. He set up the campaign website a week before those photos were leaked. So that shows his true side. He increased national insurance taxes on working people, which Boris decided to go back on. He's a flip-flopper, just like Liz Truss, with the windfall tax on energy companies. I don't really see why Rishi would win. So I'd probably go with Rishi Sunak because I think he wouldn't deviate that far from what we have already. So he would be a pretty uninspiring couple of years, and he'd lose the next election. Although I think Liz Truss could potentially cause quite a lot of, from my perspective, damage, and also I think she'll lose the next election because she won't be able to do anything she actually wants to anyway, in terms of the economy. In terms of other stuff, maybe.
So I have a slight difference of opinion. Agree with your analysis that 2023 is there's either a Labour landslide or a Labour minority propped up by Lib Dems and Democracy.
I think it depends whether that's Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss there, because I think Rishi Sunak, Labour minority, Liz Truss, I think Labour could get a majority. It would be I don't think it'd be a landslide. I think it'd be quite slim.
Whereas I think it's the other way around. I think if we continue on the programme we're on at the moment, Labour will get a landslide because the cost of living will get worse. Not this. Now I'm saying this with a little bit of, caution.
Yeah.
Because obviously we don't know what they're going to do when they're in office. I again don't think Liz Truss would damage the country as much as you think she would, but that's because I happen to believe in the supply side view of economics. But my problem is both of them are falling into the kind of binary kind of trap of you deal with inflation or tax. And I think the problem is, I think Rishi Sunak is right to say we need to deal with the debt. And Liz Truss is right to say that we need to bring taxes down on all sorts of things. And you can do that by, first of all, actually reversing the national insurance hike. Slashing income tax, because all it is tax on wages and tax on working class people. But then,
what do you do about energy prices?
You get rid of the 50% green levy tax on every pound, you just get rid of the whole, we're going to hit net zero by 2050. That policy, whilst, okay, I get it. Here's what you do. You get rid of that policy and you actually build something we both agree on. Nuclear power stations. There's lots of places in this country where there's enough room to build them.
I saw this really funny clip on Twitter the other day, and it was Nick Clegg in 2010.
Oh, yeah.
Someone asked him a question about nuclear power, and he said, oh, well, there's no point because it'll be 2021, 2022 before we can open them.
Oh, just when the energy crisis... So the way you deal with the energy crisis is actually by going to a form of better energy, which is nuclear energy. I think, for me, it's absolute nonsense that we have been for years pushing this kind of idea of like renewable energy, while not talking about the actual good renewable energy there is. So I'm a big fan of building nuclear energy. You create jobs, like green jobs, because it is one of the cheapest and probably, I don't want to say safest because we're aware, but actually, if you actually look at nuclear energy disasters, it has always been because of bad management, not because of nuclear energy.
You can find statistics online. Nuclear energy is statistically safer than wind.
Alright, okay. I didn't know that, so I didn't want to state that. But yeah, so like there's that. But it just bugs me. Like I think, look, my personal view is Labour will make the situation worse as well. But it'll just seem like a change.
I don't think Labour will be all that different.
Labour solutions will be corporation tax going up, kind of more money kind of being thrown at situations, so more funding for an NHS that's broken, kind of, because this is one of my big problems. I would love, in a Tory leadership campaign, you're talking to a base of people who do not idolise the NHS. Imagine the perfect situation to set out an alternative version of the NHS where the news will actually broadcast it. In a general election, you don't have that ability. You don't have the ability in a general election to lay out, okay, here's what we do with the NHS.
It's suicide.
Yeah. However, do you know what? Most people, if they heard a more kind of European style healthcare system and actually looked at and someone that's, I don't know if there's anyone that could do this though in the Tory party who's smart enough to do this. You could lay out a decent enough plan of reforming the NHS so that we remove like a centralised bureaucratic system and you just have the hospitals are pushed off, sold off, but they're still free at the point of use. It's just an insurance-based system, and but no one wants to talk about that. This is my problem with a lot of these things. The reason why I want a Labour government, right, is because Tories are stale. Let's do it. The Labour Party has gone through centrism with Miliband, Marxism with Corbyn, and kind of like Blairism 2.0 with Starmer. With reasonably new ideas being discussed. If you're a conservative, most conservatives that have most of the really ideas on the right that are being discussed about all the time, like ideas of nationalism and common good kind of versus individualistic conservative, can't be discussed when the party's in power. So part of me is maybe the Tories should be out of power for a good 10 years.
I think the problem with
Just a sec, I've got a parcel.
Okay.
Sorry, otherwise my doorbell would have been ringing very, very loud. So.
Alright.
Yeah, what were you saying? Sorry.
Yeah, but the point I was going to make is the membership at the moment want someone who is calling for supply side stuff, right? They want tax cuts, they want corporation tax cuts, income tax cuts. But I think for me the problem is if Starmer is doing the sort of Blair thing, which is micromanaging economy in terms of I don't think he'll stand on tax rises at the next election. He won't stand on for anyone. That was one of the 4 pledges in '97: no tax rises, no income tax rises, which happened throughout the New Blair government. The Tories tried to fight that with
2 seconds.
This very.
Who's this door noise? Right. I promise now it shouldn't. If it goes off again, I'm going to break it.
Yeah, I think the problem is if the Tories try to fight a new Labour-ish message with a sort of Thatcherite economics, it didn't work in the early 2000s. They tried it with Howard, they tried it with William Hague, they tried it with Duncan Smith. The problem is that only works when your opposition is calling for the opposite. Is standing on tax right, very Michael for socialism, tax rises, big spending. I don't think that's what Labour's going to stand on because they want to win. They want to win. I don't think Labour have actually wanted to win for quite some time. They haven't taken winning seriously. But I think Keir Starmer is taking winning seriously. And I don't think that message of Thatcherist economics is going to really resonate with people.
No, and I think
the seats they need to hold are in the north. And working class people, tax cuts for people earning over £50,000 a year, that doesn't help them.
No.
What they want to hear is how inflation is going to come down so they're not being priced out of food. They want to know how their energy crisis is going to be solved for them. That's what they want to hear.
Yeah, and I think yeah, sorry. I also think, look, if we talk about Labour as we are, Keir Starmer accepts Blair's kind of position on progressivism. The 1970s Marxism isn't progressive. Okay? So that's Blair's analysis. Blair's analysis is that progressivism needs to embrace capitalism. And you saw this all the way through the night. Like, if you listen to his critiques of Corbynism. And that's the interesting thing for me is Labour will win the next election, but they won't win it on, like, the kind of an SDP platform. They won't win it on a Corbyn platform. They'll win it, ironically, on a modified Blairism. Because I think Starmer knows, or like a 21st century updated third wayism. Because that's who the Lib Dems are. The Lib Dems are the Blairists of our day. Like, they are... It's essentially where Blairism went after 2010 was into Lib Dems, and it stayed there, essentially. Pro-Europe, kind of pro-social liberalism, pro-economic liberalism. It stayed there. So Starmer knows that if he's got to get the Lib Dems, he's got to move. But again, okay, what's Starmerism? Like, what does Starmerism look like?
Well, the main problem Starmer has is the platform that he stood on for Labour leader is very, very different to the one that he's currently talking about.
He stood on a platform of unity.
Well, it was basically Corbynism with a new face. Basically it was mass nationalisation, very, very pro-union, tax cuts for the tax rises for the wealthy, all that kind of stuff, right? And you can find the campaign material online.
I slightly remember it.
And now he's saying there will be no nationalisation. He openly said that members of the cabinet cannot go on picket lines. He will not. I don't think he'll call for tax rises to anyone. In fact, they spent the best part of 3 months berating the Tories for tax rises.
Yeah, the funniest thing is watching.
When was the last time you had a Labour government, a Labour Party attacking the Tories for tax rises? It's mental.
It's madness, but also think of it this way: Angela Rayner, who is probably the most left-wing member of that cabinet, right, is going on the BBC to attack the Tories on tax rises. Now, this could be... Starmer could be essentially a political genius. Danny used to say that what Labour need to do is, his words, not mine, bullshit their way into number 10. What he meant by that is have Corbynistic principles without Corbynistic tactics. Don't present fully that. Like, essentially, get yourself into number 10 and then do all that. So there isn't... And maybe that's Starmer's trick. Maybe we're all missing it, right? Maybe he's being dull and he's doing all this. And day one of him being in number 10, he mass nationalises huge industries, totally reverses all the anti-trade union laws, bankrupts the country and gives us to China in like 2 weeks. But, like, he could be Blair in his persona and how he presents himself, but Corbyn in principles. Again, I don't think he is. There's nothing for me to point to him being that. But he still could be.
It's just weird to me because I've never actually... I don't have a memory of any Labour government.
I do.
You know, and I watched the film the other day, The Big Short, about the financial crisis. And the lead up to the financial crisis. And I never like was like, oh, you know, Blair and Gordon Brown and they were responsible for the financial crisis. But it does make you think a lot about the 2000s and the excesses of bankers and the lengths that they were willing to go to make as much money as possible, and the government basically facilitating that. And that's, you know, it's not a Labour thing. That stuff was going on in the 1980s.
I think what was weird, like, I don't remember much of the 2000s, but I remember enough of them. Even I thought Tony Blair was the one of the greatest Prime Ministers in the world. That opinion changed in 2011, 2012 when I was having conversations about politics with my foster dad. But I generally did think Tony Blair was the greatest Prime Minister in the world. Because you've got to imagine, Tony Blair left office And the country was booming. The country was booming. Regardless of what you think, I think his policies were disastrous. I think they did. I think they set us up to be in the situation we were in 2008. But by all measures, you could look at this country, and most people would say, yeah, there was something about the noughties that were weird. The whole globe, like, liberal democracy had won. Like, free market, free trade, a kind of smaller government.
Global interdependence, globalization.
All globalization had won. And it worked. And then 2008 happened. My first political memory, I think, is the bigoted woman situation. I remember just seeing it on the BBC News where it's like, Gordon Brown apologises for calling a woman a bigoted woman for asking about immigration. And that really summed up, I think that moment summed up the 2010s.
I remember Northern Rock going under, the bank. And I remember the 2010 election.
So do I.
And I think I remember the bigoted woman, but I think the big first news I have two news memories, you know, like when you're watching the news in the morning before you go to school. I have two big ones before the age of 10. One is the death of Michael Jackson, and the other is Northern Rock going bankrupt and just seeing the queues of people trying to get their money. And then when the financial crisis happened, and it's just strange, you know. It's 2000s were a weird time.
They were. It was a bizarre time. It was like, oh, I just need to message, but they were just a bizarre time because I think. Can I call you? I'm gonna have to do a lot of editing of this one. So it'll go up, but it'll go up when my laptop turns up tomorrow. Can I call you a bit? Just not free at the moment. But I think, so, look, what's weird is to think, I'm old enough to remember a world where politics didn't determine everything. And I do think 2008 was the moment it changed. Because in 2008, you have what is the biggest financial crisis in the 30s. What's interesting is the development of populism, not fascism. So a kind of healthy reaction in some sense. I don't think populism is all bad. Everyone's populist in some sense. But yeah, so like that's your. I'm trying to think. What do I have any of the earlier memories? I don't remember Barack Obama's election. I remember thinking 2009 to 2015 was a rather blissful years. I was defending austerity. I was kind of pro-Cameron. Thought the Cameron, Osborne, Obama, Biden years were probably reasonably safe and secure for most of us. But I do wish sometimes just go back to that. I wonder if we ever can get back to that pre-08 time.
I think every time we get close to it, something happens. You know, I think 2017, Theresa May wins a majority. Things are quite different in this country.
Yeah.
Because she could have easily solved the Brexit crisis without having to, Boris Johnson in the picture. You wouldn't have had the second referendum crowd. You wouldn't have had much divisive chat about Brexit and divisive language. Because if you go back to 2017, no one's calling for a second referendum. You know, the Lib Dems said a confirmatory referendum. So they said, we'll have a referendum on the Brexit deal. But it wasn't like, we'll have a referendum to just cancel Brexit. We'll just run it again. You didn't have mass street demonstrations. Labour had accepted Brexit was going to happen. And I think 2017, if things went differently, and Theresa May hadn't run the worst campaign of any expected winner in history, then maybe things would have been different. And maybe we'd have been looking now and we'd have said Brexit was solved in 2018. We left, 2 years earlier than we actually did.
I wouldn't have argued Brexit was solved, but
majority. No, I think things could have been a little bit different. And Theresa May in COVID, I think, would have been a lot better than Boris Johnson in COVID. But we'll never know.
I think there are blips. I think we'll get the opportunity again. I think you're right in some sense. Look, I'm not a fan of Theresa May. I joined the party under Theresa May and left the party under Theresa May. I became a Tory in 2011 or 2012, but I officially became a member in 2016. I think the way I look at it is this, that, I think that I also wonder who would be leader of the opposition, because I think Corbyn would have, if the Tories had ran a better campaign, Theresa May would have got a Thatcherite majority. She would have got 2019. Corbyn would have had to go. I do wonder what I wonder if, much to the chagrin of Europhiles everywhere, if you would have had people staunchly arguing for a anti-Brexit message in the Labour Party. But we'll never know.
I think Keir Starmer's doing the right thing at the moment. I just not really talking about it. He's just settled.
Well, again, if it gets brought...
That's a political move. That's not a personal move, is it? Because we all know that Keir Starmer's the biggest Remainer to go.
Yeah, but what I'm saying this as a staunch dislike of the European Union. Don't like it, think it's useless, think it shouldn't exist, think international governments like that with that much power should not exist, right? But you know what I'm sick of? I don't want to hear about it anymore. We've left. I'm sick of, I'm not bothered Liz Truss was a Remainer, because we're all Brexiteers now. You're either a Brexiteer or a campaigning for a rejoiner. There is no Remainer. If you're a Remainer, you're naturally a Brexiteer. What I mean by that is you've accepted we've left, unless you're arguing for a rejoin. So I don't care. If someone runs on a platform of rejoining the European Union, quiz them on it. Great. And I'd like the BBC to push the absurdity of rejoining as much as they did the absurdity of leaving. That would be fun to see. But
well, I think we should rejoin the single market, but I don't want to rejoin the European Union.
Here are my... Well, sorry, Mr. Hannon. Didn't know you were
No, I think purely from a logical perspective, the main problem that we're experiencing from Brexit is customs hold-ups, and I've experienced this myself. I ordered a record from the Netherlands, and
Oh,
it was stuck at Dover in a customs facility for 2 months.
oh, that's mad. That's
It
madness.
came to the UK within 2 days, and it was stuck in Dover in a checking facility for 2 months.
It is
It's
madness.
ridiculous.
I don't know where I stand. Like, sometimes I think I was a no deal Brexiteer in the height of it, but whether I'd be a no deal Brexiteer now, I don't know. Maybe Hitchens right that we should have gone for a Norway deal. Like, I think that's single market membership, but we make our own rules and all that. We sign up to a single market without having to sign up to the political agreements.
That's what I mean.
Which is essentially, by the way, what Thatcher campaigned for in 1975. Like, it wasn't joint.
What most practices pre-referendum wanted as well. So
Yeah, it's essentially the benefits of being a member of the European Union. Well, the political restraints
and the financial contributions as well.
Yeah, which is fair. Like, it's the only trading bloc.
They did say that they'd never do that deal again. The European Union, they'd never let anyone else do that again. But I think it would have been beneficial to them because we'd still be a member of the economic sphere. So, we'd still be contributing to them. We still get to buy all their stuff tariff free. They still get to buy all the 3 things that we export tariff free. That is ultimately why the European Union was annoyed when we left. It wasn't because they wanted us in there on a political level. It's because we buy all their stuff.
Yeah, and I think
we buy German cars, we buy French cheese and wine.
Yeah, well,
we buy Danish pork,
and we also buy records from the Netherlands accordingly, or wherever you got it from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do this. Let's wrap this up by predictions. So, who wins? When's the election? And what's the outcome? Seats.
Okay, I think Liz Truss wins. I don't think that's even in doubt anymore. I mean, every polling indicated at least that every influential member of the parliamentary party is back to Liz Truss now, really. I think Labour wins a minority, and they're very, very short. They're only slightly short. I think they win around 315 to 20 seats. So they're 10 to 15 short. And I think the Lib Dems win 25-ish seats, 25 to 30. I think there's a confidence and supply agreement because the problem with the coalition is the Lib Dems will want electoral reform without a referendum. And they've come out and said that. Ed Davies said that. I think it'll be a confidence supply, and I don't think it will last very long. And that's because the Lib Dems will not want to make the mistake they made last time, which is backing something that they don't necessarily believe because it provides stability to a government that they have no real control over.
And didn't sell legacy for 10 years.
Exactly, because the problem with the coalition, not to go over this again, but the Lib Dems had no power, but the little power that they did, they wanted to keep, right? And they voted for something that ruined them. And I don't think Ed Davies is going to make that mistake because he was at the forefront of the coalition, right? He was in the cabinet. He knows what he's doing now. He can learn from mistakes. So I think the government will last maybe 2 or 3 years until there's a big vote on something that's quite unpopular. Because I think there will be some difficult financial decisions that will have to be made by government in the next 5 to 10 years. We will have another election. And I have no idea what to predict there. I have no idea what will happen there. But I think the Tories will get a big shock next election because everyone apart from them seems to realise what's going on. Because they'll come out and they'll say, in 2015, They've been behind the Tory. They've been behind Labour for 7 months. That hasn't happened since in their 12 years in power. That has not happened. There's been the odd period in 2017, in 2015, but this is not the same. So yeah, Liz Truss wins the leadership election comfortably, 2/3 majority, I'd say. So she'll get 66% of the vote-ish. And she loses, Labour minority, there's a bit of a confidence in supply for a bit, not a formal coalition. And the government collapses.
When do you think the election is?
It's difficult to say because I think while she won't want to make the Gordon Brown mistake, she also needs to realise that she has a ridiculous majority. And I don't think a lot of those northern seats, those northern MPs would be particularly happy if she called an election knowing full well that I'd say quite a few of them would lose their seats. Even in a Tory win scenario.
Yeah. Agree with you that it's Liz Truss. I think we have an election next summer, so summer 2023. I think in a year's time will be, if we do this again, and discuss this again, I think we'll be discussing a Liz Truss versus Keir Starmer election. And I think we'll be in the middle of it. I think the election result is a kind of repeat of 2010. I think there's depending on what message Lib Dems run on, they could generally have 40, 50 seats. Which would be a wet dream for you, I'm aware.
It would, yeah.
And Labour on 300, Labour on what Cameron's on 310, so not enough to form a majority. I don't think it's confidence of supply. I think Starmer commits to electoral reform without a referendum.
I don't think he'd get it past the unions.
I don't think he's got the union support.
If Labour loses union support and finance, they collapse.
Well, this is something we didn't talk about, but I actually think that we could be discussing an election with a Labour Party that's very different. That's not propped up by unions.
Well, I saw Ian Dale on LBC, and his opinion is the unions will always choose any Labour government, whatever form that takes, over Conservatives, and they have to back someone, right? Unions have to back someone, and Keir Starmer is taking that position. He's saying the unions may threaten me, they may do this, they may do that, right? But at the end of the day,
bless you.
Sorry, they will always back the Labour Party because they will always see them as a vessel for some kind, or to have some kind of leverage over. I think that's, so I think Keir Starmer's playing a risky game, but I think they will still back the Labour Party.
But I think
the reason that is because of the last Labour conference, the membership overwhelmingly voted for proportional representation, but it failed because the unions voted against it.
But I think he does something where, here's how I think that happens. He says to Lib Dems, look, we're gonna not have a, you can't just put the bill through, but he says, I'll present the bill to Parliament. He doesn't even go to the membership. He doesn't even go to that. He just goes, look, I'm Prime Minister now, and I can't go to and he says, I can't come to the membership for every platform decision. And he just gets through. That's how I think he does it. And the Lib Dems support him. I then think you have 4 years. And I generally think the makeup of Parliament changes because we have a different electoral system.
Oh, will massively.
I think we'll have SDP members of Parliament. I know you don't hold this, but I think we'll have SDP members of Parliament But we'll also have some more libertarian right candidates in there. I think we'll have more independents. Like, this could be the first time we look at it. In 2029, we could be looking at a parliament that is not majority Tory or Labour for the first time in our history.
Oh, easily. Yeah. If it depends, obviously, it depends on the system that they choose. But I think pure PR, so sort of like Scotland, AMS, MMS, would be very different. And I think if you're the Lib Dems, and Labour do say we'll give you PR, a proper PR system, to them it won't matter if they have to then end up supporting an unpopular thing, because if they get 10% of the vote, they win 50 seats.
That's what I mean. I think in our lifetime, if what happens in the next kind of parliament cycle with a new prime minister, in the sense of new prime minister, not a new Tory prime minister, what I think will be fascinating is if this happens. 2029 is a wild time, but don't get too excited, because if the Tories win in 2024 or 2023, this goes downhill. You could see in our lifetime a Lib Dem government. Majority Lib Dem government.
That might be.
Yeah. Sat watching the TV in like 30 years with my... going, huh? Alex, you're up to... what? He's made it. No.
I don't want
No, but it's that thing of like, you will have, I don't know, a majority Lib Dem government, or a minority government propped up by Labour.
Potentially. Where do you think, last question, do you think there will be an independence referendum, and what will be the outcome?
I think there will be, and I think we're going to see the breakup of the union.
I think they have to give them an independence referendum.
Unless the way to solve this is federalism, but no one wants to go down that option. But
I think for me, by not giving them the referendum, it actually works against you.
Against me? What are you talking about? I'm not a Tory.
It basically, well, I mean, just against like excessively pro-union approach, right? It's like, we're not going to give you that referendum. It basically proves the point that Westminster is overly centralised and bureaucratic, and that the Scots have no control over the political system, which they don't. But at least if you give them the referendum, it makes it look like you're giving them some element of choice and power. And I think it's going to be very, very, very close. I think it could easily mirror a sort of Brexit referendum result. I think they always flirt with it, right? They always flirt with the idea of voting for independence, but I don't know if they ever actually will.
Yeah, politics is politics that win the politics of stories. And the problem is, I don't think the union have... There's no one presenting a good counter-narrative to the nationalist message coming from Scotland.
Well, if the anti-independence campaign came out and they presented, like, say, the Conservative Party and Labour, they came together and they said, here's a manifesto of what we promise to do if you stay, right? So what we'll do is we'll try and seriously tackle the drug addiction problem. We'll try and solve poverty in the inner cities. We'll do all these things. If you aim the things that they actually care about, right, and aim it specifically at Scotland, I think that would be successful, right? But the problem is, they won't do that. What they'll do is they'll say, well, they'll do what Remain did, right? Oh, it's going to cost you this much money per household. It's going to do this, it's going to do that. Versus, we can rule our own future, independence from the UK, we can rejoin the European Union, we can be part of the global sphere again, we can be influential, all these things. And it's just not going to... It's going to work. I think it's going to work. I don't know. We'll see. Look, there will be an independence referendum.
The 90s and the noughties were the period of it's the economy stupid. The 2010s and 2020s are it's the narrative. stupid. And I think the problem is our political class hasn't woken up to that yet. But who knows?